Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are not just looking at a topic, we're looking at the topic, the bedrock, sort of the source code of reality.
It really is the operating system for the physical world, isn't it? Without the subject we're discussing today, we are essentially navigating the universe blindfolded.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We are tackling Sir Isaac Newton, and I think for most of you listening, the name Newton summons a very specific, almost two-dimensional image.
Right, you see the white wig?
Yeah, the white wig, the solemn face in an oil painting, maybe the apple falling on the head. He's less of a person and more of a statue in a hallway.
That is the common perception. He's the marble bust in the library.
Yeah.
He's the science god who handed down the laws of physics from on high. But the reality is so much more complex.
Exactly. And that's why I'm so excited about the source material we have in front of us today. It tells a much messier, more human, and frankly, a kind of tragic story.
Very tragic in the beginning.
Yeah. We aren't just here to recite formulas or talk about coefficients. Our mission today is to get behind what the source calls the gravity of genius.
I like that phrase.
That's great, right? We want to understand the man who, according to our notes, is the trifecta: scientist, mathematician, and astronomer.
That really is the holy trinity of the scientific revolution.
Right.
Because usually you get someone who is great at one, maybe they're a brilliant observer of the stars, but the math escapes them.
Sure.
Or they're a math wizard, but they can't apply it to the physical world. Newton was the rare anomaly who could do it all.
But what stands out to me in these documents isn't just the success, it's how close we came to not having Isaac Newton at all.
That is the terrifying part of this biography.
It really is the hook for me, the what ifs. Because when you dig into this, you realize that the guy who defined how planets move, who invented the math we use to build skyscrapers, was almost forced to spend his life herding sheep in a muddy field in England.
It's a thought that should keep us all up at night. I mean, the modern world satellites, engineering, space travel, the device you're listening to this on, it is all hanging by a thread because his mother really, really wanted him to be a farmer.
So we're going to unpack that fail farmer arc, which I honestly love because it makes me feel better about my own career pivots.
Same here.
And we're going to look at the work-from-home era that changed history. Because, let's be honest, he was the original remote worker. And we're going to break down exactly why that apple matters.
And we have to get into the toolkit, the math, the telescope, the Principia, the things he built that we still use every single day.
Absolutely. So let's rewind the clock. We are going back to the mid-17th century, section 1, the origins of a genius. And honestly, looking at the source, this starts like a bleak Dickens novel.
Very bleak.
It's not a happy beginning at all.
No, it's incredibly grim. We're looking at a birth date of January 4th, 1643. The location is Woolsthorpe, England.
Set the scene for us. Because Woolsthorpe sounds quaint and pastoral, but the reality of the Newton household was, it was heavy.
Heavy is the right word. You have to understand the context of the birth itself. England is on the brink of civil war. It's chaotic. And winter in Lincolnshire is cold and dark.
Yeah.
But inside the house, it's even darker. The source notes that his father, whose name was also Isaac Newton Sr., was a farmer. But young Isaac never met him.
Because he died 3 months before Newton was born.
Correct. So right from the jump, you have this ghostly presence. He is given his dead father's name.
Wow.
He's born into a house that is in deep mourning. Psychologically, that sets a baseline of loss. He is the man of the house from his very first breath, but he's living in a vacuum.
And it's not just the father. The situation with his mother, Hannah Iskov, is where the real trauma seems to set in. The source explains she's a widow with a newborn, which is a very precarious position in the 1640s.
Highly precarious. You need economic stability. You need protection. A widow running a farm alone was a target for all sorts of difficulties.
So, when Isaac is just 3 years old, she remarries. Which, on paper makes sense. You do what you have to do to survive. But the terms of that marriage, that is the pivotal moment.
It is the inciting incident of his life, really. She remarries a man named Barnabas Smith, a wealthy clergyman from a nearby village, but the arrangement explicitly excluded Isaac.
That is the part that breaks my heart.
She moved in with her new husband to his rectory, but the source states she left Isaac behind in the care of his grandparents back at Woolsthorpe.
I want everyone listening to pause on that. You are 3 years old. Your father is dead, so you have no memory of him.
Right.
And now your mother Your one tether to the world essentially hands you off to your grandparents and walks away to start a second family down the road.
It is a profound rejection. And we aren't talking about a weekend visit or a summer camp. This was a separation that lasted for years. If we're trying to analyze the man behind the math, this is the cornerstone. That sense of abandonment, of being deemed unwanted, drives a child.
Usually in one of two ways, right? I feel like you either get total rebellion and chaos trying to get attention, or you get this intense solitary inward focus.
Exactly. And with Newton, we see that solitary fortress being built. He learns very early that he cannot rely on the people who are supposed to protect him. The adults leave, they die, or they move away. So he retreats into his own mind.
He builds his own universe.
He builds a world where he is in control, where the rules don't change arbitrarily.
It explains so much about his later personality, the secrecy, the difficulty with relationships, the defensiveness. He's protecting himself.
He is armoring himself. And while his grandparents provided care, the historical record, and our source here, doesn't paint a picture of a warm, cookie-baking grandmother.
Right.
It was likely a strict, efficient, loveless environment. He was effectively an orphan with living parents.
So, this lonely kid grows up, he enters the school system, and here is where I expected the source to say. And he was instantly recognized as a prodigy who floated above the ground. But it doesn't say that.
No, it doesn't. The source says he attended school and was, quote, an adequate student.
Adequate. I love that. It is so wonderfully underwhelming.
It is. It's like finding out Beethoven was okay at piano lessons, or Shakespeare was decent at spelling.
It really highlights that genius isn't always linear. It doesn't always show up on the report card in the way we expect. He wasn't dazzling the teachers. He was just there.
He was likely bored. Or perhaps his mind was working on things that the standard curriculum, which was mostly Latin and rote memorization, didn't cover. He wasn't wired for that kind of performance. He was just scraping by, flying under the radar.
Until we hit the failed farmer arc. This is my favorite detour in the biography because it feels like a sitcom premise.
It is a crucial pivot point, but yes, it has a lot of inherent comedy.
So his mother eventually returns to his life. Her second husband dies, and she comes back to Woolsthorpe. And she decides to pull him out of school. What was the logic there?
Lineage and property. You have to remember, his father was a farmer. They owned land. In the 17th century, land is everything.
All right, it's your whole livelihood.
If you have land, the eldest son farms it. That is the rule. That is the structure of society. She wanted him to manage the estate, to be a proper country yeoman.
So she yanks him out of the classroom, hands him a shepherd's crook, and puts him in the pasture.
Yeah.
We have this image of Isaac Newton, the guy whose mind is contemplating the infinite standing in the mud. How did that go?
Disastrously. The source puts it diplomatically. Isaac had no interest in becoming a farmer.
Which is code for he was terrible at it.
He was neglecting his duties. There are stories that fit the source's narrative of him reading books under a tree while the sheep were wandering into the neighbor's corn or getting stuck in fences.
Oh, man.
He was building water wheels in the brook instead of watching the herd. He wasn't just bad at it. He was actively disengaged.
Disinterest is a powerful thing. You can be a genius, but if you don't care about the task, you're going to look incompetent.
Precisely. In farming, if you aren't paying attention, things die, get lost, or cost money. It became obvious to everyone, even his mother, who really, really wanted a farmer for a son, that this boy was useless in the field.
And thank goodness for that incompetence.
Right. It is the successful failure.
Because if he had been a good farmer, if he'd been obedient, dutiful, and just focused on the sheep, he would have never gone back to school. We might still be waiting for the laws of motion.
We would be living in a very different world. It's a testament to the importance of fit. Sometimes you are failing because you're a fish trying to climb a tree. Newton was failing at farming because he was built for physics.
So the family realizes this isn't working. He returns to education, and this time something clicks.
Yes, he goes to the King's School in Grantham for his preliminary education. And now that he's back, he isn't just adequate anymore. The source says he excelled and achieved the top rank.
He found his lane. He realized, okay, I'm not a farmer, I'm a scholar. I better make this work because I don't want to go back to the sheep.
Fear is a great motivator, and that momentum propels him to the next level. In 1661, he enrolls at Trinity College, Cambridge,
The big leagues.
the center of the intellectual universe in England. This is where the magic is supposed to happen. But there is a detail here in the notes that creates a really interesting texture to his time there. He enrolls as a Caesar.
A Caesar.
Yeah.
That's a term we don't use anymore. For everyone listening, break that down. What is a Caesar?
It's a socioeconomic distinction. Cambridge was full of wealthy aristocrats, young men who were there to network, drink port, and prepare for a life of leisure or politics. Newton wasn't that. A Caesar was a student who couldn't afford the tuition, so they paid their way by performing menial duties.
Like what kind of duties?
Waiting tables in the dining hall, cleaning the chambers of the wealthier students, emptying chamber pots. Basically, he was the help.
So imagine that dynamic. He is likely smarter than every single person in the room. He knows it. But he is serving them dinner.
That has to fuel the fire. We already know he's a loner. We know he has this background of rejection. Now he's at the top university, but he's at the bottom of the social ladder. He has to prove he belongs there. He isn't just coasting, he is fighting for his place.
It creates that chip on the shoulder that so many great achievers seem to have. He has something to prove.
Absolutely. He isn't there to make friends. He is there to master the knowledge.
So he's grinding away at Cambridge. He's learning the standard curriculum, Aristotle, the classics. But then history throws a massive curveball.
It's a great play.
We are looking at the years 1665 to 1667. And I think that for all of us today, we have a very visceral understanding of what this means.
It resonates differently now, doesn't it? We understand the disruption.
Disruption is putting it mildly. The university shuts down. It's too dangerous to be in the city. The cities are death traps. So Newton has to pack his bags and retreat.
He goes back to the one place he knows, Woolsthorpe, the farm.
Back to the scene of the crime, essentially. Back to where he failed as a farmer. But this time, he isn't there to herd sheep.
No, he is there to think. This period is historically known as the Annus Mirabilis, the miracle year. Or closer to 2 years, really.
And the source emphasizes the word isolation. He didn't have Zoom. He didn't have Slack. He didn't have professors lecturing him. He was totally alone.
It was deep, unbroken solitude. And this is a crucial concept. In the modern world, we are obsessed with collaboration, brainstorming, group chats, open plan offices. But Newton's greatest work happened when he was completely cut off from the network.
The source attributes an insane amount of productivity to this specific window. It says during this time, he developed his theories on calculus, gravity, and the laws of motion, all of it, in 2 years.
It's almost ridiculous. It sounds like a myth, but it speaks to the power of deep work. Without the distractions of university life, the lectures, the social obligations, the serving of food, he could hold massive, complex problems in his head for days at a time.
That's the key, isn't it? He could follow a thought all the way to the end without being interrupted by a notification or a knock on the door.
Exactly. He was farming ideas. And because he had that silence, he could hear the universe talking to him in a way he couldn't in a busy dining hall. He was turning problems over and over in his mind until the solution fell out.
And one of those conversations with the universe, according to the legend in our source, happened in the garden. We have to talk about section 3, the apple.
You cannot tell the Newton story without the apple. It is the most famous anecdote in science. It's up there with Archimedes in the bathtub.
The source sets this around the 1661 time frame, or rather links it to that young Isaac era in the garden during the plague years.
Right. He's sitting in the garden at Woolsthorpe. He's in a contemplative mood.
And an apple falls. The source says it falls on his head, which is the classic cartoon image, though historians argue about whether it hit him or just fell near him. But the physical impact isn't the point.
No, whether he got a bruise or not is totally irrelevant. The point is the stroke of brilliant insight that followed.
But let's play devil's advocate here. Apples had been falling from trees for thousands of years. People knew things fell. Cavemen knew things fell. Why was this moment special?
That is the key question. The insight wasn't that gravity exists. Everyone knew that if you trip, you hit the ground. The genius was the leap of logic. Newton looked at the apple falling straight down and asked, how far does that force go?
Does it stop at the top of the tree?
Exactly. Does it go up to the clouds? Does it go to the birds? Does it go to the moon?
That's the jump. That is the moment the universe changed.
That is the unification. Before Newton, the general belief, dating back to Aristotle, is that Earth and the heavens were two different realms with two different sets of rules. Earth was heavy, messy, and things fell down. The heavens were perfect, divine spheres moving in circles. They were separate.
And Newton looked at the apple and said, no, it's the same force.
He realized that the moon is constantly falling toward the Earth, just like the apple. It's just moving sideways so fast that it keeps missing the planet. That creates the orbit. The force pulling the apple is the same force holding the moon.
That is such a massive shift in perspective. He connected a mundane garden event to the movement of celestial bodies.
He unified the cosmos. He showed that the rules in your backyard are the same rules in the deepest reaches of space, and he did it just by sitting there and thinking.
But here's the problem. Having an idea is one thing. I can have an idea that time travel is possible. Proving it, that's the hard part.
And that is where Newton separates himself from just being a philosopher. He didn't just have the theory, he built the tools to prove it.
This brings us to section 4, the toolkit. Because the math that existed at the time wasn't good enough, was it?
No. The math of the 17th century, mostly geometry and algebra, was great for things that were standing still. If you want to measure a pyramid or divide a field, algebra is your friend.
But falling apples don't stand still. They speed up.
Exactly. Acceleration, change. Planets don't move at a constant speed. They speed up and slow down depending on where they are in orbit. The existing math couldn't handle that continuous change. It was like trying to measure the speed of a car using a ruler.
So what did Newton do?
He invented a new kind of math.
Just casually. Oh, the math is broken. I'll just build new math.
As one does. The source says he invented a whole new type of mathematics, which he called fluxions.
Fluxions. It sounds like something from Back to the Future. Hand me the fluxion capacitor.
It comes from the word flux, meaning change, the math of change.
But today, we know it by a different name.
Calculus.
The subject that has terrorized high school students for generations.
Indeed. But we have to defend it here. The source notes it is critical for advanced engineering and science. It's not just abstract torture for students.
Give us the so what on calculus. Why does it matter to the person driving their car today?
You cannot build the modern world without it. If you want to calculate the stress on a bridge as trucks drive over it, that's calculus. If you want to optimize the fuel efficiency of an engine, that's calculus. If you want to send a rocket to Mars, you are using Newton's fluxions. It is the language of motion.
So he builds the software calculus, but he also built some hardware. The source highlights the reflecting telescope.
1668. This is a huge leap in astronomy.
Telescopes existed, though. Galileo had one decades earlier.
Galileo used a refracting telescope. Think of a pirate spyglass. It uses glass lenses to magnify the image.
What's the problem with that?
Lenses act like prisms. When light goes through them, it bends, but different colors bend by different amounts. So when you looked at a star through an old telescope, it would be surrounded by these blurry rainbows. It's called chromatic aberration. It made the image fuzzy and inaccurate.
And Newton, being Newton, probably hated fuzzy.
He hated imperfection, so he realized, why am I using lenses? I should use mirrors.
How does a mirror help?
A mirror reflects all colors of light exactly the same way, no rainbow effect. He ground a curved mirror, put it at the bottom of the tube, and bounced the light back up to an eyepiece. It was smaller, more powerful, and crystal clear.
And the source says this mechanism is still the standard.
Nearly all of the major telescopes used in astronomy today are reflecting telescopes. That's what the source says, and it's true. The Hubble Space Telescope, mirrors. The James Webb Telescope, giant gold-plated mirrors.
So when we look at those beautiful deep space images of galaxies, we're looking through a device that traces its lineage directly back to Newton's workbench in 1668.
He literally changed how we see the universe. He sharpened the image.
So let's take stock. He has the math, which is calculus.
Yeah.
He has the physics theory, gravity. He has the hardware, the telescope. He has spent the plague years cooking all this up. Now he needs to publish.
He needs to tell the world, or rather he needs to be convinced to tell the world because he was notoriously secretive. But eventually he does. Enter section 5, the magnum opus.
The year is 1687. The book is, take a deep breath, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica.
Or just the Principia if you don't want to twist your tongue.
The source calls it one of the most important works in the history of science.
That is an understatement. It is the book. It is the user manual for reality.
What is actually inside it?
Everything. The source breaks it down. It introduced the law of universal gravitation. It defined the principles of modern physics. And crucially, it outlined the 3 laws of motion.
These are the laws we all learn in school, but let's refresh them for you real quick.
Sure. First law, inertia. An object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon.
The couch potato law.
Exactly. Second law, force equals mass times acceleration. F equals ma. That's the equation that lets you calculate how hard you hit something.
And the third law.
Action and reaction. We'll get to that later as the source highlights it specifically at the end.
But taken together, what did this book do to the human understanding of the world?
It removed the mystery. Before the Principia, the world seemed chaotic, unpredictable. Why do things happen? Because God wills it. or because spirits move it. Newton said no. The universe is a machine.
A clockwork mechanism.
Right, it's deterministic. If you know the position of a planet and its speed, you can use these laws to predict exactly where it will be in 1,000 years. It gave humanity a sense of control and understanding we never had before.
The source says it helped to explain the movements of the planets and the sun.
It proved that the universe makes sense. It follows rules. And we can know those rules. That is a massive psychological shift for the species. We stopped being victims of the cosmos and started being observers of it.
So by 1687, he's done it. He's the smartest man on Earth. You'd think he would just stay in his ivory tower and bask in the glory. But Section 6 takes a really weird turn.
The statesman era, this is where the biography gets juicy.
Yeah, Newton steps out of the lab and into the swamp of politics.
It's surprising, isn't it? We think of him as a hermit, but the source lists his resume. Professor of mathematics at Cambridge, Fellow of the Royal Society, eventually President of the Royal Society.
But then he gets elected to Parliament.
Yes, he represented Cambridge University.
Can you imagine Isaac Newton in a political debate?
Well, the historical rumor is that he only spoke once in Parliament, and it was to ask someone to close a window because it was drafty.
That tracks. The thermodynamics in here are inefficient. Close the window.
But his most surprising role, and the source highlights this significantly, is when he moves to London in 1696 to become the Warden of the Royal Mint.
The Royal Mint, the place where they make the coins.
Yes. Now, typically, this was a cushy job. It was sinecure. You get the title, you get a nice salary, you show up once a month to sign some papers, and you drink sherry with the other elites. It was a retirement gig.
But that is not Isaac Newton's style.
Not at all. The source says he took his duties seriously.
Which, for Newton, means obsession.
Total obsession. You have to remember, at this time, England's currency was in crisis. Counterfeiting was rampant. People were clipping the edges off silver coins. The economy was collapsing.
So Newton decides to fix it.
He goes full detective mode. He didn't just manage the books, he went undercover. He hunted down counterfeiters in the seedier parts of London. He interrogated suspects. He built cases against them.
The source says he tried to get rid of corruption and worked to reform the currency.
He applied that same ruthless, logical intellect to crime. If you were a counterfeiter in London, the last thing you wanted was the guy who invented calculus coming after you. He was efficient, and he was merciless. He sent men to the gallows.
It really shows a different side of him. He wasn't just a head-in-the-clouds theorist. He was a rigid administrator. He hated disorder.
Whether it was disorder in the solar system or disorder in the British economy, he wanted to fix it. He wanted to impose rules. He couldn't stand the idea of a chaotic system.
And the crown noticed.
They certainly did. In 1705, Queen Anne knights him. He becomes Sir Isaac Newton.
The first scientist to be knighted for his work.
That is a huge cultural signal. It says that science is now a pillar of the state. Just like the military or the aristocracy, it elevated the entire profession. It made scientist a respectable, powerful title.
It's a heck of a journey. From the fatherless farm boy in Woolsthorpe, rejected by his mother, failing at herding sheep, to a knight of the realm.
It is the ultimate validation. He proved everyone wrong.
But entropy eventually wins.
Yeah.
Even for Newton. We reach Section 7. The final chapter.
The end of the era.
He died on March 31st, 1727,
In London,
at the age of 84.
which we should note is ancient for the 18th century. He lived a very long, very full life.
And the source leaves us with one specific quote to remember him by. It's arguably his most famous line.
Every action there is always opposed an equal reaction.
Newton's third law.
It is fascinating that this is the one that sticks in the public consciousness.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Why not F equals ma?
Because the third law transcends physics. Yes, it explains how a rocket works. You shoot gas down, the rocket goes up. But it feels like a philosophical truth, doesn't it?
It feels like karma.
Exactly. In politics, in relationships, in business, if you push, there is a pushback. It captures that sense of balance and symmetry in the universe. Newton showed us a world that was balanced. It wasn't random. It was fair in a mechanical sense.
It's a beautiful thought. So let's bring this in for a landing. We've gone from 1643 to 1727. We've covered the tragedy, the plague, the apple, and the knighthood.
It's a massive arc.
What is this so what for you listening at home? Why does this matter today?
The so what is that you are living in Newton's world right now. If you drove a car today, you use Newtonian mechanics. If you crossed a bridge, you trusted his calculus. If you checked the weather forecast, which relies on satellite data, you are using his orbital math.
We are tech-savvy people. But our tech runs on the foundation he poured.
Exactly. He built the basement that the skyscraper of modern science stands on. Even Einstein, who came later and updated the rules, stood on Newton's shoulders.
And I want to leave you with one final thought. It's something we touched on earlier, but I think it's the most inspiring part of the story.
The isolation.
The plague. The crisis.
Yes.
The Great Plague was a disaster for the world. It was a time of death and fear. It ruined the economy. It closed the universities. But if that crisis hadn't happened, if the university hadn't closed,
Newton never goes home. He stays at Cambridge. He gets busy with lectures. He grades papers. He gets distracted by faculty politics.
and we might not have the theory of gravity?
It is a provocative thought. The worst external crisis of his life created the perfect conditions for his internal genius.
Chaos in the world led to order in the mind.
Beautifully put.
So the next time you are stuck in isolation or things aren't going to plan, just remember that might be your Apple moment waiting to happen.
Indeed.
That's it for this deep dive into the gravity of genius. Thanks for listening. Keep looking up.
And watch out for falling fruit.
We'll see you next time.